Welcome to the Spiritual Studies course recap, commentary, and answered questions, I suppose. There's been 52 sessions that have been made, and we're reaching a summit point. As to why I'm making this commentary now, you'll hear throughout. This is for all audience that have followed the course throughout. So I first want to comment on the philosophy behind the course. So this was all made under one choice statement of the wisdom of all traditions. To approach the wisdom of all traditions, one is not particularly sold on one way of thinking. When somebody is in debate club or is a lawyer, there is the suspension of belief that you could argue both sides. This isn't a good analogy. It's not a perfect analogy, but it's a way of approaching things without bias, ideally without bias. So if you would care to look at, I think it's been apparent throughout the course that there's a particular love for the traditions that get unmentioned. And this is difficult at times. So this is something else I've really wanted to address, which I've received comments on. The difficulty of researching and depicting foreign cultures. So I've hinted at it, but I am not born unto these cultures. I do not speak the language of these cultures. I am not raised in that phenomena. However, that doesn't mean I'm useless. We can pull information, we can attempt to deliver it in the most credible and respectful way possible, but it's difficult because what information is there? Is this information valid? Is it credible? Is it right? Is it honoring? And when talking of a huge swath of people, no matter what the topic, and especially when it comes to belief, this is very difficult. Now, it doesn't mean that since it's difficult, it doesn't mean it shouldn't be done, but it should be done with a hedging. And in almost every session, you see that I'm trying to give context, I'm hedging, I'm trying to make it known that I am not selling this topic out. I'm not I'm not claiming that I know. I'm not claiming that it's been encapsulated. I'm always attempting to push people to investigate it further because that's the nature of the study. Um, the spiritual studies course is a tremendous familiarization. It's a introduction to generalities or to enclaves of human tradition. So in this vein too, I am very throughout this course, I've been very limited. Some people have asked for sources and proper bibliographies, and the truth of how this course has been made and why this course has been made. There's basically two audiences here. There's one audience who is the audience that I made this course for, and that is that I've been hired by Cascade Unitarian Universalist Fellowship in East Wenatchee, in Washington State. I have been in the position of the religious educational director. And throughout my position, taking on many different responsibilities, one of them was to begin an adult education. And so this course was made for them. They are the patrons, that they are the ones that I've been hired to make the content for. When I put out the content, it amassed more audience by virtue of the medium of YouTube. That is the secondary audience that vastly at this point outnumbers the original audience of which I was hired to create this content for. So with that said, there's my context, right? Um, my assignment was to come up with a session, an hour-long session, from week to week. This limits me in what I can pour into the subject. I got lucky with many of the subjects because I had a previous knowledge that I could better access, leap from. But in other cases, I was sprawling. Um, and a lot of it is sourced from the internet, in which is not always credible. Although I would argue that if one knows how to look, even if they're .coms, even if they're they're not very well kept sites, you can find some truly honoring stuff if you know how to look, if you know how to research. So, within the week span, to make a subject and to give it its research for what I can. I was also graced with, if I knew a subject was coming up far enough ahead of time, I had a budget to be able to get books, and then I could use primary sources. But to take the time to make a bibliography, to get better sources, to write it all down, and to throw it all for everybody would mean that I'm already cutting into what I need to start getting to for next week and next week and next week. So the content takes work, and it takes labor, it takes consideration, weighing different sources. And so you're stacking a lot already on top of something that's a lot. And so there's only certain sessions that really have that full-fledged, here's where you can find it all. Um, so that's been my limitation under the very circumstances that have allowed me to undertake the making of this course. um, Now, to kind of jump out of that, back into the philosophy of it all, what are some syntheses or synthesize that we can take away from the expanse of the 52 sessions that have been made thus far? Mm, that's a lot. Uh, there are so many ways that various ancient and modern traditions are saying the same things differently. A great example of this is the ether talk. And in that, it was all about that these various ancient traditions were using different words to describe the same thing. And superficially speaking, one would think that these are all different things. But no, it's in fact a miscommunication of different language. And in the same vein, we've seen the same story across the world in different ways. Like the chaos conf is a great example, the Leviathan, the great primordial snake, right? So in that way, you have different names in that story, whether we're talking Canaanite, whether we're talking Hinduism or Christianity, and what that story means. So if a people inherit a spiritual tradition, a myth per se, they're going to put their own spin on it naturally, based off of their own cultural dimensions and their own histories. their own flavors, you know? And so in this way, not every story is correct in its own variation. And here's the other note. Another tremendous challenge of focusing on different spiritual traditions is this limit of knowledge of contemporaneous society. And there's a few ways I can touch on that. It was made very starkly true when speaking on Aboriginal Australians and this resistance to putting a story on paper, because the stories of ancient time, before we had to make religion about a book or spirituality about a book, was that the story was a living organism. It was a living tradition that could be changed, that could be, the heart is still there, but it variates through time. It has an open air. And in pursuit of history, or in pursuit of a feeling of certainty, what do you people believe? We must have, there is this neurosis that we must have the story, this kind of, this is the true myth, you know, the true falsehood is that there is the story, that it is one thing. And this is only by our bias of scripture, that we have painted ourselves in a corner in a certain way in Western society when we interpret what a religion is, that it's the book, it's this book, but not that book, but this book and that book, or just this one, right? All these books put into one big book, the great book, you know. You know, whether you look over at like Hinduism too, you know, you have the Vedas, and then you have the variants of different sections of Hinduism that entertain different Upanishads. There's this variance in different spiritual traditions as to the approach of the sacredness of writing, of scripture, of the book. So that's another limitation. Now, on the other end of things too, this is all a battle with the unknown. Human civilization, human existence, actually, more accurately, human existence brings about very fundamental questions that have been teased at throughout the course. And that is, more or less, what are we doing here? How did we get here? What's up with death? And the biggest and most nebulous, what's going on? Which also encapsulates the question, how do I live rightly? Which is an interesting linguistic tangle and dualistic tangle. And this is all dancing across the unknown. And as I've stated throughout the course, we have answers to these questions. You have answers in this culture, you have answers in this culture, you have answers over here, you have answers over here, and they all are near in certain answers, and they're far in other ways. There's agreeances and there's differences, naturally, because it's the unknown. So if somebody's missing, we can cook up many reasons to why they're missing, because we don't know. They could be here, they could be there, something bad could have happened, or they could be fine. And it's in that trepidation, it's in that unknown, that there's a lot of space to fill. And so there's a lot of answers to bring to that open space. And in this way, everybody is right. Everybody is right. And that's the wisdom of all tradition, that it all teases to this rightness. And the other part that I brought up throughout too is, where does that particular answer to the question leave us? Does it leave us as a better practicing human being with decency, respect, and honor on this earth? Or does it leave us judgmental, self-aggrandizing, self-righteous, or self-flagellating? And it's not about, in that way, it's not about the rightness, the truth with a capital T of the belief of the people. It's about where it leaves you, in what state it leaves you, in what mental space it leaves you, and how that has you treat others. So that's a really wide swath recap, something that's been teased at throughout. And as is always said, within this session is no means able to cover everything. There's many gaps in the course that have been left undone. A lot of the East has been left untouched. Um, all manner of mysticism of the East, except for, say, Taoism and a touching on Confucianism. The I Ching has been left unmentioned. The shamanisms of the previous, we got some talk of the native Japanese people prior to, what is, well, Shintoism, a focus topic on Shintoism. There's several gaps, across the United States, the native peoples, the many different traditions there, the natives of Canada, many natives across the earth. Africa has been largely untouched, many subjects left untouched, different variations on stories of heaven and hell, what the underworld means. There's so much left to that has been left unmentioned. I'm very aware of that. I'm very aware of that. This is a lifelong thing. So I want to take some time to kind of comment as well about in overlooking my favorite sessions, where I think they're my favorite. There's what is popular, and then there is what the creator enjoys. um and I loved and always wanted to do that session on Taoism, most notably the second half of the session, because it's so different than other traditions, and the implications of its beliefs are amazing, and it comments on things that a lot of spiritual traditions don't. And it touches to the heart of many troubles in modern society. And so that course is something that particular session on Taoism is something that I find myself going back to, but generally hasn't gotten as much traction, and I think naturally so. I really love the shifting and chimera, the birth of religion session. That one took me a lot of work. That was a lot of stitching things together from across various traditions. And I don't, again, that is not an answer to the whole question of how religion started. It gets there, and it really does have some meat on those bones. But just the way that it all came together, dancing across the world and referencing different traditions, the different linguistics, because if it's probably apparent throughout the course, I'm fascinated by etymology. And I don't know, just the way it wrapped together, and that ending narrative was just very poignant. And I felt like I really got fully utilized in that research. And this isn't a bias of me, but I really loved the Polynesian segment in the same vein. It's not to say that I enjoy the Polynesian beliefs any more than other beliefs that have been touched on the course, but I felt that the Polynesian session really, because the whole premise of it was to research the ancestors, the similarities between all of the different people across the different islands. And that was a goose chase. That was a really um, that was also very intensive research labor. And to find these similarities and to give the voice to what seems like it's been very suppressed by Christianity in Polynesia to the ancient beliefs, and the due respect to the genius of, like, say, their circumnavigation, and also the amazing ties between stories of, say, the Greeks and stories that you'd find with the Polynesians, or stories that you'd find in Native America of coyote, and how that would tie to Maui, of the different stories of Maui across Polynesia, and how truly connected this seeming isolated part of the world is. So I really enjoyed that session because of how much there was to say. And like I stated before, I really enjoy the focus on those that get unmentioned, those left unmentioned in the classical narrative, not taught in school, blah blah blah. And by the same extension, the Siberian shamanism episode. I mean, the amount of things that go into nod back to Siberia was truly enlightening and truly humbling. That session, I do feel that there are things to improve. There are things I didn't get to touch on. Um, I kind of wanted to talk about too many people, and I didn't. I would have liked to take more time to really delve into the ideas and the ancient um, beliefs more, uh, and maybe even how they came to be there. It was another interesting lead, the various peoples of which they brought the stories from, and also the tie to the bear cults of Europe that I didn't really get to ever bring through. But yet again, another session where it just really rang that bell. And the last two, when it comes to my favorites, is I love the ether session. And again, you can see where my favorites really lie. The ether session across the world, all these different traditions, tying these different concepts together, seeing how they're related. And in that episode too, I had to research physics. I had to research different quotes by physicists, different models of understanding the world. And it's not very much in this course where we get to undertake that scientific scientism, a contemporary mind state. And then the snake episode, and by the same extension, I mean that one across the world, various research. And with that session, I really felt like people understood what I was doing with it, and that was that I am not giving answers. I'm giving out all the beads, and you guys can tie them together how you wish to form the necklace, like there was so much commentary um that I feel like it really came across that you all can do with this as you please. And that's what I really ultimately hope for, is that I'm not coming across as a bogarter, as somebody who's standing on a podium, or as somebody who's claiming like this is all given freely and openly. And I hope that people also understand that I aim in my most ideal and for everything that I can give as openly and as to approach as lightly and as curiously and as honoring as possible. And I felt like that one really came across in that session. Now, in contrast, the most popular as of right now of doing this talk, Celtic paganism, Canaanite polytheism, Norse paganism, Slavic paganism. Do you see a theme here? I mean, these are the hard hitters in this fascination with paganism in the modern day. And I think that is because it's back in the mind's eye of society. Paganism is this kind of curiosity, this kind of renaissance that's happening, this new age renaissance, and it makes perfect sense given the narrative of human thought, of human history, where we had these institutional religions that really bogarted all ways of thought. And since it's been dissolving in a very real way, and radicalizing in others, then comes this void, this open space to bring back that which was suppressed. And so people are looking for answers. And so here's, these, well, they're curious about these answers, And I've seen in my time, living, I've seen covens, communes, pop up pop up here and there, and I've been privy to some, and I'm ecstatically grateful to see them. um Variants, the buffet of human thought. Let this beauty shine, right? And all of the propaganda that's been done unto these various paganisms is messed up, and to kind of peel that back and to get rid of these forced cultural negative associations, I say all the power unto you, and it's surprising too, because the attention towards the Canaanites, the attention towards the Slavs, and the attention towards the Finnish really surprised me. I mean, I did not think that the Canaanite, the Slavic, and the Finnish paganisms would really get much traction at all. I don't do these sessions to get traction. I just have a general sense of how much interest there's going to be, I suppose. And that those ones really took off. There's a lot of engagement there. um, and I was supremely happy to learn and to have the dedicated time and the resources to be able to dive in. Fascinating, and I wish I had time to go over all that I find fascinating. But of course, too, there is Mithraism, the session on understanding Ezekiel's vision, the session on the Sumerian influence on the Bible, and esoteric Christianity are also up there when it comes to, the more popular sessions, the more viewed sessions. And I think those make more sense to me. The esoteric Christianity is, people wanting literally to get a more esoteric look, the theologian look in on Christianity, because they know there's got to be more to it and all this crypticness of scripture. And there could be many motivations as to why somebody's digging in there. Um, and not all of them are very pure of heart, I must say. The goddess worship thing, I think, is tied to the newfound fascination of paganism, and I say if I had the time and resources to really lean in on that subject extensively. I mean, that is something of human history that's only now starting to really be unraveled and revealed. And I think that if given its due course in culture, will really have resounding effects. I mean, it really is a token of the modern age to have to grapple with the pre-religion of all societies being the mother. That is strong stuff, challenging stuff. I love it. And lastly, Mithraism. Some of these seemingly occult secret society talks also get some traction too. And again, that is the fascination of that which is hidden. And I'll say it again, as I've said before in the course, these things, you can find information on these secret societies. You can get some real deep dives into these secret societies and what they believed, whether it's the Rosicrucians, whether you buy the secret doctrine of the Theosophists, whether, I mean, digging into Pythagoras, Hermes Trismegistus, the Emerald Tablets of Thoth. I mean, these things are being made available for people. And really, I've acted as simply just somebody of a middleman, as an access point, because it's all there. But I suppose I simply have just acted as someone who's dove into it for you to give a compressed ideas to familiarize you with what you might care to go further into. I mean, I guess all teachers, all preachers, all those that have disseminated knowledge are always middlemen in this way. Um, Now, As a wrap up to all this, um, as of now, here's personal. As of now, I am ending my employment with the RE director position. I am no longer being funded and employed to make these sessions. So in this way, it would seemingly be the end of the course. Um, I don't know. The question is, what now, right? Do you expect to see any more content here for both those that are from the congregation and those that are from the greater audience that have found this content, this channel? You may have noticed that there are some videos, I think two, that were made previous to the spiritual studies course on this channel. I am leaving this position because I am going for a master's degree and moving away from where I live now. Um, I don't know what my life looks like uh, within the next year, the responsibilities I'll have, all the minutia and mundaneness of making your way in this world and living and finances and yada yada. This is something I am personally passionate about. This is something that I research and always have researched by myself. It was only by virtue and the grateful opportunity of this course that I got to lean into this and to be helped to lean into this and share it with people. In previous years, I would just research by myself and I would keep it to myself and rant ferociously to anyone who would invite themselves to that. um, so what now? I don't know. I don't know. I People have talked to me about doing Patreon or funding the course in some way. I want to say that I don't want to commercialize the course. If you see an ad on these videos, I don't get money from that. I wouldn't monetize this course. I'm not interested in that through ads. That is. Um, that is YouTube's new standards where they can put an ad on whatever they want, no matter how many views there are and no matter the consent of the creator. Um, I suppose I'll rummage around with the idea of patronage. That would be the only way that I would be comfortable receiving anything for doing this. It very well could be that I'll just make sessions of my own volition as it was my own interest. And it's all done completely independently and on my own time. And so then I'm only accountable to myself. Um, but if there's going to be a development in that category, if I come up with a plan, then I will put out information, or I'll let everybody know who's following. But otherwise, I suppose this is goodbye for now.